What if everything you have been doing to manage your stress is actually making it worse? Not slightly worse, measurably, biologically, chemically worse. What if the exhaustion you wake up with every morning, the fog that sits behind your eyes by midday, the weird inability to fall asleep even when you are completely drained, what if none of that is about your schedule, your workload, or your circumstances at all? What if the real problem is something happening inside your body right now, in this moment, that nobody ever told you about? Because here's the truth that took me a long time to fully understand. The stress is not the problem. The stress was never the problem. The problem is what happens inside your body when stress never gets to finish. There's a hormone running through your bloodstream right now, and depending on how long you have been living under pressure, that hormone may be slowly shrinking your brain, dismantling your metabolism, destroying your sleep architecture, and making every single emotion you experience feel approximately 10 times heavier than it actually is. That hormone is cortisol. And before you think this is just another wellness conversation about deep breathing and green tea, stay with me, because what chronic high cortisol actually does to the human body is something most people are living through without any idea it even has a name. You do not feel high cortisol the way you feel a headache. You don't feel it the way you feel a fever or a pulled muscle. You feel it as that low, constant hum of dread that follows you from the moment you open your eyes. You feel it as the brain fog that makes a simple decision feel like lifting something heavy. You feel it as the exhaustion that is somehow always present during the day and completely absent the moment you lie down to sleep. You feel it as belly fat that does not respond to anything you try. You feel it as irritability that ambushes you, snapping at someone you love over something so small you cannot even explain it afterward. You feel it as that creeping sense that you are always on the edge of being overwhelmed, even on days when nothing particularly bad is happening. Sound familiar? Because if it does, this is not a character flaw. This is chemistry. Here is a number worth sitting with for a moment. 83% of American workers report experiencing chronic stress, not occasional stress, not stress that comes and goes, but persistent, daily, grinding stress that has become the background noise of their entire lives. And that number has been rising every single year for over a decade. What that means biologically is that tens of millions of people are walking around with a cortisol system that was built for short emergencies, being asked to run indefinitely, without a break, without a reset, without ever being allowed to complete the cycle it was designed to complete. Your body was engineered for a very specific kind of stress: short, intense, survivable. You encounter a threat, cortisol spikes, your heart accelerates, your muscles load with tension, your vision narrows, your entire system mobilizes everything it has. You act, the threat resolves, the cortisol clears, your body returns to baseline, rests, repairs, and prepares for the next time. That system is genuinely brilliant. That system kept every single one of your ancestors alive long enough to produce you. The catastrophic problem is that your brain, as sophisticated as it is, cannot distinguish between a physical threat and an emotional one. It does not matter that the lion is now an inbox. It does not matter that the predator is now a rent payment, or an unreturned phone call, or a conversation you have been dreading for 2 weeks. The cortisol spike is identical. Your body responds to an aggressive email from your boss the exact same way it would respond to being chased. Full mobilization, every time. And unlike a predator, the email does not go away. The financial pressure does not resolve in 30 seconds. The deadline does not get outrun. So the cortisol spike never fully clears. It layers on top of yesterday's spike, and the spike from the week before, and the month before that, until your baseline is so elevated that your body has essentially forgotten what calm feels like. Research published in the journal Biological Psychiatry found something that should disturb every single person living under chronic stress. Sustained high cortisol actually reduces the volume of the hippocampus, the region of your brain most responsible for memory, learning, and emotional regulation. You are not just feeling worse, your brain is physically, structurally changing. The tissue is shrinking. And then there is what researchers have named the cortisol trap. When cortisol stays chronically elevated, it suppresses the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for rational thinking, forward planning, and keeping your emotional reactions proportionate. Which means the more stressed you are, the harder it becomes to think clearly about how to reduce your stress. The cycle does not just persist, it locks, it tightens. You cannot think your way out of it because the very tool you would use to think your way out, your rational mind, has been suppressed by the problem itself. But here is the exit, and it is not what you have been told. There are 3 specific habits grounded in real biology, tested in real research, that can measurably lower your cortisol in hours. Not in weeks of consistent meditation practice, not after a month of lifestyle overhaul, in hours. And the third one is the one I need you to stay for, because it sounds strange, it goes against almost everything most people instinctively do when they're stressed, and it may be the single most practically useful thing you learn this entire year. But you need to understand the first 2 first, because they build towards something even more powerful when you use all 3 together. The first habit is called the physiological sigh, and it's the fastest biological reset your nervous system has access to. You've almost certainly done this involuntarily at some point in your life, that sudden, deep, shuddering double inhale that happens when you've been crying hard, or when something overwhelms you suddenly and your body just takes over for a second. That is not random. Your body does that on purpose because it is trying to fix a very specific problem, and once you understand what that problem is, you'll use this deliberately for the rest of your life. When you're under stress, the tiny air sacs in your lungs, called alveoli, begin to collapse. When those sacs collapse, carbon dioxide builds up in your bloodstream, and elevated blood CO2 is one of the most powerful biological triggers for anxiety and panic that exists in human physiology. This is not a metaphor, this is not a feeling, it is a chemical event. The rising wave of dread you feel when stress escalates is not weakness, it's your body responding accurately to a real change in your blood chemistry. The physiological sigh reverses this in under 30 seconds. The first deep inhale begins to reinflate the collapsed alveoli. The short second inhale on top of it fully expands them. And then, the long, slow exhale activates the vagus nerve and hands control back to your parasympathetic nervous system, your body uses for rest, repair, and recovery. Researchers at Stanford studied dozens of different breathing interventions and found that the physiological sigh produced the fastest measurable drop in physiological arousal of any technique they tested. Faster than box breathing, faster than meditation, faster than anything else.
Here's what to do. The next time you feel stress beginning to rise, not when you are already past your limit, but the moment you notice the first sign, do this. Inhale deeply through your nose. Then, before you exhale, add one short additional sniff on top of that inhale. Then, release everything slowly through your mouth. Do that twice in a row, 30 seconds. That is the entire intervention. Your cortisol begins to drop immediately. Your nervous system receives a clear signal that the emergency is over. And because the mechanism is physiological rather than psychological, it does not require belief. It does not require a certain mindset or the right emotional state. It just works because it is biology following instructions. The second habit works while you're doing something you already do every single morning, and it uses a reflex so ancient it predates the human species by hundreds of millions of years. One of the most effective cortisol-lowering tools available to you is already sitting in your bathroom. It is cold water. And before your mind goes to ice baths and extreme wellness culture, this is something completely different. This is a reflex your body carries automatically. It is called the mammalian dive reflex. When cold water makes contact with the skin around your eyes and the bridge of your nose specifically, your body interprets it as submersion, and the biological biological response is immediate. Your heart rate slows, your vagus nerve fires, blood is redistributed, your parasympathetic nervous system assumes control, and cortisol drops. Researchers studying freedivers found this reflex capable of reducing heart rate by up to 25% in trained individuals. But here's the important part. You do not need training. The reflex is already fully operational inside you. You simply have to trigger it. What makes this habit even more valuable is the timing. Cortisol follows a natural daily curve and peaks within 30 to 45 minutes of waking, a phenomenon called the cortisol awakening response. In a healthy, low-stress person, that morning spike is actually useful. It gives you the energy and mental activation to start the day. But in someone living under chronic stress, that morning spike is already launching from an elevated baseline. Starting your day from that elevated floor means everything that follows is amplified. Every minor frustration, every small pressure, every unexpected problem lands harder than it should. Splashing cold water on your face first thing in the morning does not just make you feel more alert, it actively brings that baseline down before the day has a chance to build on it. You are not reacting to stress, you are proactively lowering the floor from which stress accumulates. Every morning, before your phone, before coffee, before anything else, go to the sink and splash cold water on your face 10 times. Focus the water on the area beneath your eyes and across the bridge of your nose. If you want the full effect, hold a cold, wet cloth over your eyes for 30 seconds. 2 minutes total. Studies suggest people who do this consistently report measurably lower anxiety within 3 to 5 days, not because of placebo, but because their cortisol is genuinely, measurably lower.
Now, the third habit. This is the one I need you to stay with, because your first instinct is going to be to dismiss it. And if you do, you will be leaving behind what might be the most important piece of this entire conversation. Have you ever watched a dog after something frightened it? A sudden loud noise, a near miss, something that startled it completely. Watch what happens in the 30 seconds after. The dog shakes, full body, uncontrolled, involuntary trembling for 30 seconds or a minute, and then it is completely fine. Tail wagging, walking away, no lingering tension, no replaying of the event, no residual anxiety. Just done, finished, moved on. That is not a quirk. That is the stress cycle completing itself exactly the way nature intended it to. When a threat occurs, stress hormones flood your body to prepare it for action. Cortisol, adrenaline, muscle tension, elevated heart rate. These are not problems, they are tools. They are supposed to be deployed, used, and then discharged. In virtually every other animal on Earth, they are. The chase happens or the escape happens, and then the physical shaking happens, and the hormones clear out of the body completely. Life continues without residue. Humans break this cycle almost every single time. We experience the full hormonal flood. Every biological alarm goes off. But then we sit at our desks. We suppress the physical response because we are in a meeting or a car or surrounded by people. We breathe and hold ourselves still and tell ourselves to calm down. And we believe the stress is gone because we stopped showing it, because we composed ourselves, because we acted like everything was fine. But the cortisol is still there, the adrenaline is still there, the unfinished stress cycle is still stored in your body, compressed into your muscles and your nervous system, and it does not dissolve on its own. It accumulates week after week, month after month, until your baseline is so chronically elevated that ordinary life feels like an unbearable weight, and you cannot even remember what it felt like to actually relax. This is the foundation of the third habit, and it is built on the work of Dr. David Berceli, a trauma therapist who spent decades studying how the body stores and releases stress across different cultures and populations. What he found repeatedly and consistently was that the body has a built-in mechanism for discharging accumulated stress hormones, and that mechanism is shaking. Now, imagine using all three of these together. The physiological sigh the moment you feel stress rising to reset your blood chemistry in real time. Cold water on your face every morning to lower the baseline before the day begins, and intentional shaking 2 to 3 times a week to discharge everything that is accumulated beneath the surface. That is not a wellness routine. That is a complete biological protocol for a nervous system that has been running in emergency mode for too long. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and not immediately feeling the weight of everything pressing down before you have even moved. Imagine sitting in a difficult conversation at work and feeling the tension actually leave your body afterward instead of riding home with you in the car. Imagine lying down at night and having your thoughts go quiet, not because you forced them to, not because you exhausted yourself into unconsciousness, but because your cortisol is genuinely lower and your nervous system is genuinely calm. That is not a fantasy. That is not a best-case scenario. That is what a regulated nervous system actually feels like. And it is not reserved for people with less stress than you, or more time than you, or a different kind of life than yours. It is available to you through mechanisms that already exist inside your body, waiting for the right signal. Your nervous system is not broken. It has never been broken. It has just been waiting for you to give it permission to finish.